Bismillah, as-salatu was-salamu ala rasulillah. As-salaamu alaikum, guys.
As-salaamu alaikum.
It's Muslim developers here, and we're continuing with our iOS basics course. So, where did we stop last time?
Last time we connected our code to interface, and now we're able to create new habits and list them.
Nice. So far, we have 3 habits which we created programmatically, right? So every time we start our app, this array gets created. We can also add them through our new UI. Let's call it habit with double B, that we do every 3 days, and save it, right? And we press to save it, and it's here. However, if we press reloading the app, which basically closes the app and starts a new instance of it, right? And restarts it, the habit is no longer there. So there is no persistence of our data, right? How can we make our data persistent?
Actually, there are several ways to do it, and there is one native framework, CoreData, which were provided by Apple, which allows us to create persistency in our application.
Oh, great. So let's implement it.
Yeah. So first, model ID, and it created some code in app delegate. So guys, if you don't have it, please go for our source code, and you will find it in lesson 4.
Yeah, the source code is in the description.
Yeah. So, but we still need to make some things. So what we're doing is we're going to our file xcode data model ID, and we're creating new entity which represents one model that we want to present. We're tapping on it, add new entity, and we will call it habit.
Okay.
Now we need to add attributes. As we created our habit before, we will use the same attributes. So it's title, regularity, and last done date. We're going to our model, checking our entities, and creating new attributes. This one will be called title. And the type of it is string, as we did it before. We're creating regularity. And the type of it is integer, as we did it before.
Okay.
Integer is represented by decimal. And we are making last done attribute, which is of type date.
Okay. I think in case of regularity, in our struct, it's called regular. So probably it's better to keep the consistent naming to in order not to have to refactor the code.
Yeah, that's right. If we keep everything the same, then we don't need to make changes in future. That's right. Some amount of time, so maybe we'll make it in faster mode.
Yeah, let's do it super fast and then have a brief discussion on what's happening.
Okay.
So
That's a lot of code.
yeah, let's have a look on what's happening. Before we go into discussion, you can see we have a lot of habits, and it's saying habit is ambiguous for type lookup in this context. And probably the reason for it is that we have our habit entity created in our CoreData model, and we still have the old declaration of habit, which we declared as struct. And as you can see, it says invalid redeclaration of habit. So one thing that we should do is delete the struct, as we don't need it anymore. here we should be okay. We should not have, so the errors go away now. And let's have a look on what exactly is happening. So the struct CoreData helper, we are declaring as a struct, and first things that we do, we get the context in which we are operating, the context for CoreData. The context we get from the app delegate. So we get an instance, the instance of our app delegate that we have declared here, and from the app delegate we extract the persistent container and then context. So this is the context that we are using, that we will be using. Then we declare several functions. First of all, a function for creating a new habit, then another function to saving our context that we have at the moment, so the current state of the context, and then retrieving habits. So this method will return us all the habits that we have at the moment. So these three methods will allow us to, first of all, create new habits, then save the context once a new habit is created, so the current state, and also fetch the existing habits.
So all operations are done within the same context, right?
That's right. That's right. So the context is it basically saying that that's the same kind of set or the same universe we're operating within. So that's what we need the context for. And also something interesting that we can see here is static, the keyword static, which basically makes it a type function. So we can access these properties and these functions from anywhere without actually initializing an instance of CoreData helper, but using it directly from the class, which is also a convenience for us. So yeah, now let's try it, and probably we need to replace some parts of the code with our new CoreData model methods.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to it. First, what we will need is to represent what we already have in our CoreData container. So we're going to our view controller, and view did load function. We're saying that, or we need to replace our old code.
Yeah, we don't need it anymore, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
And we need to retrieve all we have. For that, we will use CoreData function that we already created, retrieve habits. And as you can see, it returns an array of habits. So we will save it here.
Okay.
Also, in our prepare function, we need to say that, okay, now this new habit needs to be added to our habits function so it can be represented. And since we have the same declaration, we don't need to change anything here. Good. And on our add new habit controller, for our save function, we need to create a new habit. But the way we created it before doesn't work anymore, since we need to make some manipulations on CoreData. So what we're doing here is we're using CoreData helper and call new habit function. It will create an instance of new habit which already operates in CoreData context, and then we set its title to what was written in our text field, and we're setting its regularity to what was preset in our decimal number function, and as decimal number, and give it the value of our regularity, so that now it can store our data.
So we convert the regularity from integer to decimal number.
Yeah, so that CoreData can understand what is an integer in general.
That's great. So what we have here now, something interesting, is that since we have CoreData, we can do without a callback, right?
Yeah.
And the CoreData will serve as a single source of truth. So we can save the newly created item here in the context and retrieve it in the main controller.
Yeah.
And the controllers themselves don't have to be passing data between each other. They can just be both of them can call the CoreData methods.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we will delete save callback here,
Mm-hmm.
and we will delete the property itself in here. So on this controller, we're saving our new habit. So it should be in our container. Now we can get this from our main view controller. So we don't need SIGUs anymore. So we can remove this function.
Okay, so there is nothing, since we are not passing anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is a problem. Still, there is a problem, is that view controller has its own life cycle, and it has many functions, and one of them, as you can see, view did load. But this function is called only on loading view controller, so it won't be called every time view controller is shown. For doing so, we have another function from lifecycle, which is called view will appear. And what we're doing here is we're removing our retrieve habits method from the loading stage to view will appear stage data, and we will reload our table view.
This method will be called every time, like when we're just initializing and about to show our controller, and also when we're coming back to it, right? And this is probably the method that we need. Since view did load, it's called only the first time when the controller is initialized and being displayed the first time. So I think let's try it out.
Yeah, let's get it. So now, as you can see, there is no data in our storage. So we will create new habit. Since we don't have command, we'll make it on a daily basis. Save it, and we have our values. But what is optional? What is it?
So the optional value is telling us that there could be a value or it could be new. And in this case, it's saying that there is value, but since it is optional, it means that we have to unwrap it. And there are several ways to do unwrap, and some of them are better practice and safer. Something we will use is we will use force unwrap. And it is not the safest method, since in case if our title or our regularity is new, our app will crash. So if there is no value and we force unwrap it, it means that the app will have a runtime error and crash. But I think one of the reasons that we already make sure that the title here exists and regularity is, if we check, it is always a value. It cannot be nil. Both of them cannot be nil. It means that we always initialize them. So here we can have the force unwrapping, and let's actually run it and see if it helps. So here we don't have the word optional anymore.
Yeah, good.
So now we've learned how to create habits with using CoreData, and the most important question is that will it persist if we close the app and open it again? So in other words, will the data persist between the app sessions? So here we close the app, we restarted it, and the habit is still there.
Good.
So now basically it's a fully functional app where we have where we can create data, and between the app sessions it will still stay with the app.
Nice. This is pretty much for this lesson, and we had lots of new things. One of them is CoreData, and another one is how to deal with this transition and connection between view controllers. So we can use callbacks as we did in previous lesson, or we can use CoreData persistence. Both ways are good, and you should choose the one that suits you the most. Yeah. This is it, guys. Stay tuned. As-salaamu alaikum.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.